Veiltha was her name, the Zalari assassin who had come to kill me. Nah, she was my only hope of finding my daughter. I still didn't trust her, but I needed her. We left Titan that night, my small repair shop nothing but a memory. The ship hummed beneath us as we entered deep space. Vel Saturday beside me in the cockpit, scanning Dominion data. I watched her closely, waiting for a sign that she was setting me up, but she never made a move against me. Instead, she worked, fast, precise, efficient. She's stationed here, Vel finally said, pointing at the screen, at Dominion outpost on Valcar-9. I leaned forward. It was a small, heavily guarded base, a place where the Dominion trained its best soldiers. She's not a prisoner, I said. She's one of them? Vel nodded. Yes, and she won't remember you? I clenched my fists. Then I'll remind her. Vel turned to me, her glowing violet eyes unreadable. If she fights you, will you still try? I looked at the hologram again. My daughter, my little girl, taken, trained, turned into something else. She's my daughter, I said. I'll never stop trying. Vel was silent for a moment. Then, to my surprise, she said, then let's bring her home. I didn't know why she was helping me. Maybe she wanted to make up for what she had done. Maybe she just wanted to escape what she was. I didn't care. All that mattered was that we were going to get my daughter back. I pushed the throttle forward, and the ship jumped into hyperspace. I had spent years running. Now, I was finally going to fight. I was alone in my small workshop when she arrived. The night was quiet, the only sound coming from the hum of my old repair tools. I had spent years hiding, moving from one colony to another, staying away from trouble, but trouble had finally found me. She walked in like a shadow, silent and controlled. She was tall, with smooth silver blue skin and glowing violet eyes, as Zalari, the Dominion's deadliest assassins. I knew immediately what she was. I also knew why she was here. She had come to kill me. I didn't move. Running was useless, as Zalari never failed a mission. I had seen what they could do. They were stronger, faster, and smarter than any human. She stopped a few feet away from me. Her voice was calm. Gold, you are king, boss. I swallowed hard. Yeah. She studied me, tilting her head slightly, as if trying to understand something. Then she reached for her weapon. I closed my eyes, but nothing happened. Silence. I slowly opened my eyes. She wasn't looking at me anymore. She was staring at something on my desk. A small, faded photo. It was old, worn at the edges. A picture of me, years ago, holding a baby in my arms. My daughter. Her fingers twitched. She took a step closer. Her glowing eyes locked on the image. Then, in a quiet voice, she asked, "Where did you get this?" Something in her tone made my stomach tighten. "Why do you care?" She didn't answer right away. She just stared at the photo like it was something impossible. Then, after a long pause, she whispered, "I know this child." A chill ran through me. My body went rigid. "That's not possible," I said. She looked up at me, and for the first time, I saw something strange in her expression. Uncertainty. "I was there," she said, "when the Dominion attacked Earth." She took a breath. "I was ordered to take children. I remember this one." My blood turned to ice. "No," I whispered. "You're lying." She shook her head. "I don't lie." My hands clenched into fists. My daughter had been taken when she was a baby. I had searched for years, following every rumor, every lead, and now, standing in front of me, was the very person who had stolen her from me. I wanted to kill her. I wanted to grab the nearest tool and drive it straight into her cold, alien heart. But I didn't. Because she wasn't reaching for her weapon anymore. She was staring at me with something I never thought I'd see in a Zalari's eyes. Regret. "She's alive," she said. "She's not the same, but she's alive." I struggled to breathe. My heart pounded. "Where is she?" The assassin hesitated. "She was taken to a Dominion training facility, raised by them. She doesn't remember you." I felt like I had been punched in the gut. "She doesn't know who she is," I whispered. "She knows what they told her," the assassin said. "She was trained to be one of them." I shook my head. "No, she's my daughter. I met her eyes. I need to get her back. She was silent for a long time. Then she took out a small device, pressed a few buttons, and a hologram appeared. My daughter. She was older now, a teenager, strong, sharp-eyed, dressed in a Dominion uniform. Not a prisoner. A soldier. My vision blurred. I had spent years searching for her, and now, seeing her like this, I didn't know if I had already lost her. The assassin watched me. If you try to take her, she will see you as the enemy. I clenched my jaw. Then I'll remind her who she really is. The Zalari hesitated. Then, to my surprise, she nodded. I will help you, she said. I frowned. Why? She looked down at the photo one last time. Then she met my gaze and said, because I took her, but I don't want to be the reason she stays lost. For the first time since she arrived, I felt hope. I didn't know how we were going to do it. I didn't know if my daughter would even want to be saved. But I did know one thing. I would not stop until I got her back. And now, the assassin sent to kill me was going to help me do it. I knew I was in trouble the moment I saw her. It was late, and I was alone in my small workshop on Mars. I had been fixing an old drone when the door slid open. I looked up, expecting a customer. Instead, a woman stepped inside. She wasn't human. Her skin was silver blue, smooth like polished metal. Her eyes glowed faintly, violet and sharp. She was tall, with a lean, powerful build. She moved like a predator, silent and controlled. I didn't need to ask who she was. I had seen her kind before Zalari, the Dominion's deadliest assassins. And if a Zalari assassin was standing in my workshop, there was only one reason. She was here to kill me. I stood up slowly, my heart pounding. There was no point in running. I wouldn't make it 5 steps. She watched me, had tilted slightly. You are Kane Voss, she said. Her voice was smooth, almost calm. I swallowed. That's right. You stole from the Dominion. I didn't deny it. I had hacked into their system and taken something they wanted to keep secret. Something big. Something worth killing for. She reached for the weapon on her hip. I closed my eyes. This is it. Then she frowned. Silence filled the room. I opened my eyes and followed her gaze. She wasn't looking at me anymore. She was looking at the photo on my desk. A small, faded picture. Me, years ago, holding a tiny, fragile baby in my arms. Her breath caught. Where did you get this? I frowned. What? She stepped closer. Eyes locked on the photo. This child. Where did you get this picture? I hesitated. It's my daughter. Her glowing eyes widened. She seemed frowning, staring at the image like it was something impossible. Then, softly, she whispered, That's not possible. Something about the way she said it made my stomach twist. I looked at her, really looked at her. She wasn't just staring at the photo. She was shaking. Why do you care? I asked. She didn't answer right away. Instead, she took a slow breath, then met my gaze. I know this child, she said, because I was the one who took her. The words hit me like a punch to the gut. What? I whispered. She nodded slowly. I was on Earth when the Dominion attacked. I was ordered to take children in once. The strongest. The smartest. We took many. She swallowed hard. I remember this one. My mind was spinning. My daughter, me little girl, taken by them. I had spent years searching, following every rumor, every lead. And now, the very person sent to kill me was the one who had taken her. Anger burned inside me. My fist clenched. Where is she? I demanded. The assassin didn't answer right away. Her face was unreadable, but I could see something in her eyes. Guilt. I don't know, she admitted, but I can find out. I shook my head. Why would you help me? She hesitated. Then, in a voice barely above a whisper, she said, Because I took her, but I never wanted to. I stared at her, my anger fighting against my need for answers. Finally, I spoke. You help me find her, and I'll tell you what I stole. She studied me for a long moment. Then, slowly, she nodded. A Zalari assassin sent to kill me was now my only hope. And I was hers. We left together that night, two enemies now bound by the same mission. I didn't know where this would end, but I knew one thing. I would find my daughter. no matter what it took. She was an alien assassin sent to kill me until she saw me. I was halfway through my synth coffee when the door to my dimly lit apartment slid open. That was odd. He hadn't buzzed anyone in. My fingers twitched toward the plasma pistol under my desk, but before I could reach it, a shadow moved. She was fast, unnaturally fast. In a blur, she was on me, pinning me against my chair, a blade pressed to my throat. Her eyes slitted and dark like polished obsidian locked onto mine. Her skin shimmered with a metallic hue, reflecting the flickering neon outside my window. She was a Zalari, one of the galaxy's deadliest assassins. And I was the target. Elias Kane, she said, her voice smooth yet laced with menace. You have been marked for termination. I swallowed, keeping my breathing steady. Figures, who paid for the hit? She tilted her head slightly, her silvery white hair brushing against my cheek. That information is irrelevant to you. Humor me, I'd at least like to know who's trying to kill me before I die. Her eyes narrowed. The blade at my throat didn't waver. Your research threatens powerful individuals. I exhaled sharply. Oh, let me guess. My AI project for interstellar peace doesn't sit well with the warlords profiting off conflict. She said nothing, which meant I was right. I knew my time was short, but I had to think fast. There was no talking my way out of a Zalari assassination. They didn't negotiate. They didn't hesitate. But then, something changed. Her grip faltered. Her focus flickered for just a second. And that's when she saw it. I followed her gaze. She was staring at the holoframe on my desk. The image flickered in and out, a grainy but clear enough picture of a young Zalari girl, laughing, holding on to my arm. I felt the shift in the air. You know her, don't you? I asked carefully. Her jaw tightened. I knew that look. I'd seen it before, in my time on the Outer Rim. A look of recognition, of pain. She was my daughter, I said softly. The assassin's breath hitched, barely noticeable, but I caught it. Her fingers trembled for the briefest moment. I thought she was dead, she murmured, almost to herself. She was, I said, but she lived once, and she mattered. For the first time, her expression cracked. The hardened mask of a killer gave way to something else, regret, pain, something deeper. I knew her as Sierra. I continued, voice steady. She was an orphan, abandoned after the Zalari Wars. I took her in, raised her. She was brilliant, fierce. My throat tightened. She died protecting me. The assassin's eyes darkened, a storm brewing in them. You lie. Check my records. Check the galactic archives. Her death was recorded, killed by a mercenary squad sent for me. I forced myself to meet her gaze. She called me father. The blade at my throat wavered. A silence stretched between us, heavy and suffocating. Then, she did something I never expected. She pulled the blade away. Stepping back, she sheathed her weapon, breathing uneven. Sierra was my sister, she admitted, voice barely a whisper. She was taken from my family as a child. We never found her. Now it was my turn to be stunned. She always believed she had family out there, I said, but she never found you. A ghost of sorrow flickered across her face, and I never found her. We stood there, two people who should have been enemies, connected by someone long gone. Finally, she spoke again. I cannot complete this contract. A weight lifted off my chest, but I didn't relax just yet. She turned to leave but hesitated at the door. They will send another, she warned. Your death is still ordered. I nodded. I figured as much. She exhaled, and, in a tone softer than before, said, Sierra trusted you. That means something. She met my gaze one last time. I will help you disappear. And just like that, she was gone. I touched the holo frame, staring at Sierra's smiling face. Maybe, just maybe, I still had a chance. She was an alien assassin sent to kill me till she saw me. Part 2. The moment the Zalari assassin vanished into the shadows, I knew one thing for certain: this wasn't over. She might have spared me, but whoever had put the bounty on my head wouldn't just let me slip away. I needed to disappear, fast. I grabbed the holo frame of Sierra, my most precious keepsake, and stuffed it into my jacket. Then, I activated the emergency shutdown on my console, wiping my research files from my local drives. My AI project an advanced system, designed to predict and prevent interstellar conflicts was the reason I was being hunted. Too many powerful people thrived on war, and they wanted me dead before my work could see the light of day. The city outside my window was a neon-lit maze of danger. Titan-5, a backwater colony on the edge of the galactic frontier, had once been my safe haven. Now, it was my death trap. I stepped outside into the rain-soaked streets, my instincts screaming at me to stay in the shadows. I needed an off-world ticket, fast. But before I could take 5 steps, my gut clenched. I wasn't alone. A shiver ran down my spine as I sensed movement behind me. I turned too late. A surge of energy slammed into my chest, sending me sprawling onto the wet pavement. My vision blurred, and a sharp, burning pain seared through my ribs. Target acquired, a metallic voice growled. I forced my eyes to focus. A towering figure loomed over me, cybernetically enhanced bounty hunter clad in reinforced armor. His glowing med visor locked onto me like a predator savoring the kill. I coughed, tasting blood. Damn it, they were fast. A second figure stepped forward, a smaller but no less dangerous silhouette, another assassin. This one was Zelari, just like the woman who had spared. Maybe there was no hesitation in his stance, no flicker of doubt. They weren't here to talk. I reached for my concealed plasma pistol, but the bounty hunter stomped down on my wrist, pinning it to the ground. You're worth more alive than dead, he sneered, but that can change real quick. My mind raced. I was outgunned, outnumbered, and wounded. This was it. But then, the air shifted. A sharp whistle cut through the downpour, followed by a flash of silver. The Zelari assassin beside the bounty hunter barely had time to react before a blade sliced clean through his throat. His body hit the ground, lifeless. The bounty hunter spun, drawing his weapon to slow. A shadow moved, and in the blink of an eye, my would-be executioner was impaled by a shimmering, curved blade. His red visor flickered and dimmed as he collapsed. I gasped for breath, clutching my ribs. And then, she stepped forward. The assassin who had spared me. She flicked her wrist, retracting her blade. I told you they'd send another, she said coolly. I groaned as I pushed myself up. Took you long enough. She raised an eyebrow. You're welcome. I managed a weak smirk, but my ribs screamed in protest. So, what now? You saved my life, only to let someone else kill me later. She studied me for a moment, then shook her head. No, you're right, your work matters. She glanced at the 2 dead bodies. If they want you dead this badly, then you must be onto something big. I exhaled sharply, big enough to change the balance of power in the galaxy. She nodded. Then we need to move. I know a place where you'll be safe at least for a while. I eyed her warily. And why are you helping me? Her expression softened, just for a second, because Sierra believed in you. That was all I needed to hear. I took one last look at the bodies around me. The hunt wasn't over. If anything, this was just the beginning. But I wasn't running anymore. I was going to fight. And I wasn't alone. She was an alien assassin sent to kill me until she saw me. The alarms wailed, red lights flashing as Dominion enforcers stormed toward the archive room. My pulse pounded. We had the data, but we were trapped. Vale spun her twin blades, her stance low and deadly. Stay behind me, she ordered. I swallowed hard, not much of a choice. The first wave of soldiers rounded the corner. Plasma rifles raised. Vale moved like lightning. Before they could fire, she was on them, blades flashing. The first soldier dropped with a gurgle. His throat slit. The second barely had time to register before she plunged her dagger into his chest. More were coming. I ducked behind a server rack, gripping the data drive like a lifeline. If we lost it, this entire mission would be for nothing. Vale snapped her head toward me. We need an exit. I pulled out my holopad, fingers flying as I hacked into the security grid. There's an emergency escape tunnel in the lower sector. If we can get there. A blast of plasma seared past my face, cutting me off. Vale yanked me aside just as another shot shattered the console behind me. Move, she barked. We sprinted down the corridor, Dominion enforcers in pursuit. A door slid open ahead, then another squad rushed in to block our path. Trapped, Vale growled, gripping her blades. We fight. No, I yanked her back. Cover your eyes. She barely had time to react before I tossed a flash grenade. A blinding white explosion lit up the corridor. The soldiers screamed, clutching their visors. Vale recovered fast. That was reckless. Worked, didn't it? She smirked. Let's go. The final escape. We raced toward the lower levels, alarms blaring at every turn. The Dominion wasn't holding back any more. Security turrets activated. Drones swarmed the halls, and automated lockdowns sealed doors ahead of us. This is getting complicated. I gritted out, hacking open the next bulkhead. Vale didn't slow. She took out a pair of guards in our path with precise, brutal efficiency, then moved faster. We reached the emergency hangar, a small cargo bay with escape pods. I nearly sobbed in relief. We're almost there. Then, a voice crackled through the intercom. You're not leaving, Kane. I frowned. See, that voice. It belonged to the man who had ordered my death. A figure stepped onto the platform above us, flanked by armored Dominion elites. His black uniform bore no insignia, but I knew exactly who he was. Director Vex? The Dominion's architect of war, the man who had Sierra killed. His cold, lifeless eyes locked onto me. Did you really think you could stop us? Vale stepped forward, her body radiating tension. We don't think, we do. Vex exhaled, almost amused. You're the assassin who abandoned your mission. He shook his head. You should have finished the job when you had the chance. Vale moved. A blur of motion, she hurled a knife straight at Vex's throat. It never reached him. An energy shield flared to life around him, absorbing the impact. He smirked, predictable. The Dominion guards raised their weapons. I grabbed Vale and shoved her toward the escape pod. Go. She resisted. I can take them. No, you can't. Not this many. Vex waved a hand. Kill them? The guards opened fire. I barely had time to yank Vale inside the pod before the plasma rounds hit. The door sealed shut, locking us in as the pod's launch system activated. Strap in, I shouted. The pod exploded out of the hangar, propelled into space as the Dominion soldiers kept firing. I barely had time to breathe before Vale slammed her fist into the console. We should have killed him. I met her glare, panting. We will. She narrowed her eyes. You better mean that. I held up the drive. This data is proof of everything Dominion's war plans. Their hidden fleet movements. We expose it, and we end them. Vale stared at me for a long moment. Then, slowly, she nodded. Then we fight. I exhaled, feeling the weight of what was coming. This wasn't over. It was just the beginning. The end. The escape pod tumbled through the void, flames licking at its hull from the explosive launch. Alarms blared as we spiraled away from Calidus -4. Engines failing. I muttered, gripping the controls. This might be a rough landing. Vale remained silent, her silver eyes locked on the Dominion facility shrinking in the distance. She was still seething. We had a chance, she growled. I could have ended him. I exhaled. No, you couldn't. Vex was ready for us. We would have died, and the Dominion would have kept winning. She clenched her fists. So what now? I held up the drive. Now, we expose them. We show the galaxy the truth. Her jaw tightened. That won't be enough. The Dominion owns the major networks. They'll bury it. I smirked. Not if we use their own resources against them. I punched in coordinates on the nav screen. She frowned. That's a Dominion relay station. I confirmed. The biggest communications hub in this sector. If we patch the data through their own network, we can't be stopped. Vale stared at me for a long moment. Then, for the first time since we met, she smiled. A bold plan, scientist, she admitted. I like it. The broadcast. The Dominion relay station hovered like a metal titan in deep space, surrounded by automated turrets and patrolling drones. Getting in was impossible. So, we didn't get in. Instead, I used the stolen codes from Calidus Minus for it to remotely access the mainframe. It took every ounce of skill I had, bypassing firewalls faster than the system could recognize them. My fingers danced across the controls, pulse racing. Almost there. Vale kept watch through the viewport. Hurry, she urged. We've got incoming fighters. I ignored the warning sirens. This was it. With a final keystroke, I initiated the transmission. Every Dominion-linked broadcast across the galaxy flickered. Screens in every city, colony, and outpost lit up with our message. The truth. The files from Calidus Minus for documents proving the Dominion had orchestrated wars, assassinations, and planetary massacres for profit, evidence that they had manufactured conflicts to fuel their war economy. And in the center of it, old Director Vex orders. We had exposed him. The reckoning. The Dominion's response was immediate. Fleets scrambled, planets rioted, people who had been blind to the truth suddenly saw. Governments withdrew their support, military leaders defected, the Dominion's carefully woven empire began to crack. Vale watched it unfold, her grip tightening on the ship's console. It's working. I exhaled, finally allowing myself to believe it. Yeah. Buchan. A chilling voice echoed through our ship's comms. You think this changes anything? Vex. His face appeared on the screen, cold and unshaken. You may have disrupted our operations, he said, but the Dominion is more than one man. We're inevitable. You will die for this. The transmission cut out, and, suddenly, a Dominion warship dropped out of hyperspace. The final stand. We can't outrun them, I muttered. They'll blast us out of the sky. Vale's expression hardened. She stood, moving toward the weapons console. Then we fight. I blinked. Vale, that's a destroyer. We have an escape pod with barely any. She turned, fire in her silver eyes. You said we fight. I inhaled sharply. She was right. The Dominion was crumbling, but unless we finished this, Vex would regroup. He would rebuild. I gritted my teeth. All right. I took the controls. Vale manned the guns. And we charged the destroyer. The last gamble. Plasma fire lit up the void. Vale fired, targeting weak points in the destroyer's hull. Shields at 40%, she called. We're not gonna last long, I warned, dodging incoming blasts. Thin an idea. I turned the ship toward the destroyer's bridge. Vale's eyes widened. You're not, seriously. Brace yourself. I pushed the engines to max, steering straight at the warship. At the last second, I ejected the cockpit module, our only escape. The rest of the ship, now a flaming projectile, collided with the destroyer's bridge. The explosion was blinding. Vale and I tumbled through space in the escape module, watching as the Dominion flagship erupted into a fireball. Vex was gone. The Dominion was done. The aftermath. Days later, we landed on a free world colony. News of the Dominion's fall had spread. The galaxy was still in chaos, but for the first time in decades, it was free. I Saturday, beside Vale on the dock, watching twin suns rise. She turned to me. So, what now? I smirked. I was thinking of finally getting some sleep. She huffed a laugh, and after that, I looked out at the stars. There's still a lot of work to do, I admitted. The galaxy needs rebuilding. People need hope. Vale studied me. Then let's give it to them. I grinned. Together. She nodded. And just like that, an assassin and a scientist to people who should have been enemies became something more. Not just survivors, but heroes. The end.